How's everyone doing? This is Mr. Nolan. I'll be doing your 2D and 2A notes for archaeology and early man. By request from some of my students, we're going to go ahead and do this in Nolan football announcer voice. So here we go, guys. All right, first question. What is prehistory? Well, guys, prehistory is the time period before we have written records. All right, so it's the time before we actually have human written records, before history. So if we don't have written records, how do we know what prehistoric humans were like? Well, we have these fun guys known as archaeologists, and they are scientists who study past cultures by locating and analyzing human remains, settlements, and fossils and artifacts. You guys might like to think of them as Indiana Jones. Really, better to think of them as Dr. Jones. Archaeologists go out, they look at past cultures, they locate, analyze human remains. Sometimes they're out in the field, sometimes those remains get shipped to them, and by the knowledge they're able to figure out by analyzing these remains, settlements, and fossils, they're able to make determinations about cultures, whether we have written records from them or not. So, what do archaeological finds reveal to us? First off, human remains tell us how people looked, nutrition, health, quality of life. If you guys have ever seen that TV show Bones, they do this literally every episode. They assemble the skeleton and they have the artist make a projection of what the person's would look like. Animal fossils will tell us animals that live in the same region as those humans. So if I find dog bones, I'm going to guess that there might have been dogs around. If I find horse bones, there might have been horses around. This will also give us a little bit of clue into what type of foods did they eat. What type of animals did they have? Were they domesticated animals? Did they have to hunt? Things like that. Tools and weapons. This tells us about technology available within the settlement. Did they have a sharpened stick, or had they figured out stone or even early forms of metal as weapons? All of these things are things we can learn. Pottery and jewelry tells us about materials available again, as well as technology, cultural, and evidence. A settlement that has a lot of shells in the settlement probably was near the sea at some point in time. Remember, tidal regions change over time. Architecture will also tell us about their culture, their technology, their mathematics. You need some mathematical ability to build a perfect pyramid 5,000 years ago. Also, it tells us what kind of technology did they have to be able to construct such massive structures, or were they simple mud huts? And lastly, texts and art. If we happen to find any texts, that is spectacular. If we don't, we have art, which will tell us a little bit about their religion, their beliefs, how advanced their culture is, and what kind of levels of literacy did they have. These are all things that an archaeologist can find simply by looking at artifacts on a dig site. Couple of important things to remember here, a couple of key places, and we'll talk about them a little bit later on. We have Stonehenge in England, which just had the recent discovery of a whole nother circle of stones buried around the perimeter. The city of Aleppo in Syria is one of our earliest civilizations, one of our earliest cities. Unfortunately, the ancient city of Aleppo has been bombed out in the last 3 or 4 years. There's not much of it left. It's a tragedy. Jericho is another early city, and it's located in Palestine. If you want to think about Palestine, start thinking near present-day Israel. And an example of great art is at the Catalhoyuk dig, which is located in present-day Turkey. And when we're placing it on maps, we'll be placing it in Anatolia. The Catalhoyuk dig is also an early city, but they've also found a lot of evidence of art there. Now, here's the question. How do we know how old a fossil is? It's this term. It's called carbon dating. And what is carbon dating? Well, that's a fun question. carbon dating's clearly something you're going to do at homecoming, right? Not at all. Carbon dating is actually a scientific test that uses the remaining number of carbon atoms in a fossil to determine how old that fossil is. I'm going to get off track for a second for the scientifically geeky. Here's how it works. There are a series of carbon atoms that we absorb on a daily basis coming from the sun. One of them, carbon-14, is slightly radioactive. We stop absorbing carbon-14 when we die. So from the minute of our death, the carbon-14 atoms begin to decay. So over time, they decay at a set rate. So based on how much of the carbon-14 is left in a fossil, we can do a pretty good job of estimating how old something is. Moving on. Human origins, now we're going to talk about 2A. 2A, so those are the two standards we're covering in this. This is quick. The first humans. The first humans, come on, were found in East Africa in the 1970s. Yes, humankind's only 35 years old. 45, pardon me, not math anymore. Actually, no, that's false. The remains of the first humans were found in East Africa. They initially found some footprints, and then they found a female skeleton, which they named Lucy, because clearly that's the obvious name. They used carbon dating and were able to figure out that Lucy is nearly 4 million years old. Now, she is not Homo sapien. She is one of our ancestors, though. All right. Here's a vocab term for you. Hominids. Hominid means humans and other creatures that walk upright. Okay, so there are some apes that are technically hominids because they walk upright. Now, humans, and this is the big thing that you need to take right here, and I'm going to show you on the map here in a second. Humans migrated from Africa, where we originated, to Europe and Asia. And then finally, they're going to work their way down to the Americas. So we have this migration from Africa to Europe and Asia, and finally to the Americas. It's going to look like this. You guys will see here that we are starting in Africa. These are some of our oldest dates. This is out of our textbook, those of you that take it. From there, we will come up into Europe. And after Europe, we are spreading throughout Asia, along the north in what is present-day Russia, and along the south, through India, into China, from China down into Australia, and then up over the land bridge, and finally down into North and South America. We need to make sure, guys, that we get this, that humanity traces its origins and where it starts to East Africa, and then from there we spread. Homo sapiens, guys, that's us. As we said, they're going to emerge in East Africa 100,000 to 400,000 years ago. So 100,000, 400,000 years ago is when we first emerged. So like I said, Lucy was 4 million years old. Lucy's technically not a Homo sapien. Early Homo sapiens are hunters and gatherers whose survival was going to be dependent upon the availability of wild plants and animals. Unfortunately, they did not have McDonald's or Chipotle 400,000 years ago to go get an easy burrito or a late night meal. They had to find their own food. They had to hunt down animals with nothing more than sharpened sticks or filed down bones, and they had to pick wild berries, wild plants, and hopefully find one that wasn't poisonous. They were hunters and gatherers. And that's where this is going to stop. We'll pick up with 2B and 2C, courtesy of Mr. Grimsland, later.